Hello, this is CSCE 310's final presentation, the group Artfolio. I am Blake Dejohn, team manager, and here are the rest of my developers. They want to introduce themselves.
Hello, I'm Jaden.
I'm Kyle.
Hey, and I'm Adam Burhan.
Cool. Next slide, please. Okay, so the premise of our project is we are Artfolio, a newly established art museum, and currently we are maintaining records of our art pieces using a large paper binder organized alphabetically. Obviously, this comes with a lot of problems. How do you delete? How do you update things correctly? How can I search through these things very effectively rather than just through alphabetical order? So to enhance this, we want to transition this information into a digital database. So the migration will streamline data storage, improve searchability, and make it overall more effective to keep these records. The required data / entities that the owner of Artfolio wanted us to have in the database includes the creators of the art pieces themselves, the users that will own these art pieces later on, and the transactions that are made through each buying of these art pieces.
So covering the hardware and the software, the software which we would be requiring for our database, the scripting language would be Python. We imported libraries from Flask, and then we also use SQL Alchemy, and as well as Flask Alchemy. And then for hardware, honestly, any laptop or a desktop computer which can run the Python files, and the HTML and the CSS code could do it. And even virtually, we can connect to a virtual computer, and that could work as well. And for our application, we coded again using Python. We had the front end using HTML files and CSS, and obviously SQL, because that's what our database is based on. There was some JavaScripting in there as well. And for all our wallpapers that are in our front end, we have PNGs for that.
Next, we'd like to talk about the CRUD for each of our entities. So I'll start off. I was in charge, of the art pieces. So the premise of this is obviously Artfolio wants to represent paintings as art pieces, and we want to keep track of relevant information such as its creator, the time it was created, its period, stuff like that. So first of all, you can create an art piece, but first you need some relevant information. So first you're going to need the actual creator before you make a art piece that was made by the creator. You also need its title, the year it was finished in, the cost, the period, so something like Italian Renaissance painting, something of that nature, basically a short description of the painting, a link to the photo of a painting, and whether or not you want that painting to be sellable or viewable in our application. Next, you can read these paintings. So paintings that have their viewable attribute as true are be able to be viewed by any user. But if they're not viewable, then, or if they have that viewable attribute set to false, then they will obviously not be viewable. This is not the case for admins, as they can see all paintings. And also the sellable attribute comes into play with this one also, because if the sellable attribute is true within the painting, you can see it in the buy menu. So the viewable and sellable are kind of different attributes versus just viewing the painting versus seeing if it's sold in the buy menu. You can also update the painting. So every attribute that I listed before can be updated other than its ID number, because that's something that we need in the database to view the uniqueness of the painting. And finally, you can delete a painting, but this is based on the user's role. If the user is a patron, they can only delete paintings that they own or bought. And however, if they're an admin, they can delete any painting. But of course, our application has referential integrity, so paintings that are referenced in other tables can obviously not be deleted.
All right, after the creators, so our Artfolio needs to maintain a detailed records of all our creators that we have. And for creators, we're going to have their information such as their first name, their last name, where they were born, their birth date, and their death dates in there especially. So admins and patrons, we have two users. So admins and patrons, they both can create a new creator. So let's say a patron is adding a new painting and it's not there in our database, the creator doesn't already exist in our database. What they can do is they can add a creator who will be associated with that painting. And an admin can obviously create all these paintings. already. But there's also referential integrity and data reinforced validation done on that. That if the creator or if the user is trying to add a creator that already exists within the database, the create function wouldn't allow them to do it because it'll just be duplication of data then. Then again, read is accessible by both the admin and the patron. They can read all the users that are already existing, read all the creators that are already existing in the database. Next, on to update to make sure that we maintain proper integrity and legitimacy of the data. Only admins have authority to update creator details. So as you can see with the screenshot on the right, that's a view for a patron user, and they do not have any link to get to updating the creator details. So only a admin can do that. And on to deleting, again, only admins can delete creator details. And that is also given the fact that a creator is not associated with any painting already in the database. So as Blake, in his functionality, or when you're adding an art piece, which is associated with a creator, then when you come back to try to delete a creator, it will not allow you to delete it because there's referential integrity enforced over there. We don't want to violate that. So the creator cannot be deleted from the database unless they're not associated with any painting. And on to the next one.
Yeah, so I'll talk about our user entity really quickly. So the users are going to be representative of the people who can log into and view our database, as well as they will be representative of the people who buy, sell, and own art piece entities. So starting with the whole logging in feature is, as was kind of alluded to in the last section, is you can log in as your own user, and user have two different types of roles. You can be an admin or a patron. For purposes of viewing the CRUD functionalities, admins have basically full access to all the CRUD functions, except for issues with referential integrity. They have full reign to do whatever they want to the database, whereas patrons have limited access. For example, it would be bad if a patron could view every single user's password. So there are a couple of instances of that. For creating users, admins and patrons can both create users. However, admins can only create admins. There are also referential integrity checks. For example, users have an email address entity, which is supposed to be unique. So if you try to create a user with a given email address that's already in our database, that will not allow you to do that. That's this email already exists here on the top right. Similarly, you can also, you must have an email. You cannot create a user without an email address because they must log in with that email and password. For reading users, as I said, you can read, an admin can read all of the information about users, all of the users in the database. Patrons can only view their own information. You would not want them seeing everybody else's passwords. Updating users, similarly, users can only update themselves. Admins can update any user within the database. And same checks are in place to make sure that you cannot update a user into changing their email to an email that already exists within the database. Deleting users, similar. Admins can delete whoever, patrons can only delete themselves. And on top of that, you have referential integrity checks to ensure that those users are not referenced in any art pieces or transactions first. So if the user is referenced in any of those, it will not allow you to delete it. It will give you an integrity error. So yeah.
So as for transactions, we made this entity because we wished our museum to store the history of painting purchases. This is kind of the norm for most museums so they can be aware of who owns which paintings at what time. For create, we allowed both admins and patrons to create a transaction, whether through the CRUD buttons on the home menu or through the buy menu. Inputs consisted of drop-down menus so that only valid values could be entered. You could only choose from existing users and existing art pieces. And finally, users can only buy paintings from their owners. If you try to buy a art piece that belongs to the museum and try to buy it from me, it would give you an error. For the read functionality, we allow patrons to only view transactions they participated in and allowed admin users to view all transactions in order to create a reasonable, natural level of authority. If you are a patron, you know what transactions you participated in, so you should be able to see those, but you shouldn't be able to see others because in terms of privacy and you don't have admin level authority. Update, pretty much the same. We allow only patrons to update transactions that they participated in. Admins can update all transactions. When a transaction is edited, with the if the buyer is edited, then that buyer becomes the new owner. If the seller is edited, well, that's just for more record keeping. That new seller doesn't own the painting anyway, so that should be fine. Just an example of how the update functionality worked. For delete, same as before, we allow patrons to only delete transactions they participated in. You know that transaction occurred. You have the authority to cancel it. Admins have one higher level authority where they can delete all transactions, no matter what. And when a transaction is deleted, the painting's ownership returns to the seller of that transaction. So let's say the museum sells a painting to me. We delete that transaction. That transaction never went. We treat that transaction as it never went through. The museum is now the owner of the painting again. Our final thoughts. So lessons learned. We probably could have managed our time better. We probably should have planned better at the initial stages, and we probably could have tested better pre-recording. If you guys can tell in the MVP submission, we had to take that a couple of times, and hopefully we improvised well enough to make it seem a bit more smooth. For our initial problem and requirements, the requirements were met, the initial problem was solved. We pretty much have done all functionality we wanted to do for this project. I know we were a little bit too ambitious at the beginning, and the professor helped us cut down on some functionalities, but our overall functionality is the main gist of it. I think we've covered all the core stuff we wanted to convey through this project. On a technical level, what was done right, all 4 of us implemented authority levels on our entities. Entity integrity was also upheld for all 4 entities. There was no inconsistency in our database. Everything was functioning as we wish. There was no like duplicate information where we didn't want any. UI navigation we're also pretty proud of because we went from a login page to a home page to all the CRUD functionalities as well as a buy menu to be more aesthetically pleasing. On a technical side, what could have been improved? We probably should have implemented transaction prices. It doesn't make that much sense to execute transactions without actual money being exchanged, or at least values from money being exchanged. But that wasn't a huge part of our program. Like we were mainly just to show off like our database building skills. So if we had more time, we probably could have implemented this. We also would have preferred smoother UX and more aesthetic UI just to make our program run better and look better while doing so. Management-wise, what was done right? All of us were, for the most part, on time for meetings. There wasn't a huge delay in terms of scheduling or in terms of attendance. Workload distribution was also pretty all right. All of us took an entity. We all collaborated on assignments, documents, planning. And finally, communication was done pretty well. At first, we used Microsoft Teams, but then we realized everyone is fine with using Discord. So we've just been using Discord to schedule meetings, to have one-on-one conversations, to pin specific people in the group chat, just make sure that everyone's on the same page at all times if possible. And finally, what could have been improved for management? We said this, we met on this idea earlier where sometimes a team member would suggest an idea and they didn't really feel like it was well accepted by the others or feel like it was brushed off when it should have given more consideration. We realized kind of at the end point, like, yeah, we should make the driving force for idea formations to be much more equally distributed, which we did do at the end, I believe. We also could have done more efficient use with our meeting time because sometimes our meetings would go over and some people felt like they could leave, but they felt obligated to stay in order to like finish the whole project. We sort of resolved this at the end as well, where for meetings there's only a set obligation time, and after that you're free to go. And finally, a stricter meeting schedule. We said that we would meet every other day, and turns out sometimes for assignments we would just meet the day of assignments being due so that everything could get done. And it is what it is. Sometimes it's necessary, but it would have been nicer if we had accounted for that. And I believe that's that. And now here's a demo for Kyle. Never mind, cut that.
Yeah, so just real quick to wrap up, we got some contributions for the team. Blake, he was kind of a good team leader. He handled hosting the database into the cloud, and he also created like the initial skeleton of our Flask app. That was very kind of him. Adam, he used the creator entity. He went above with the documentation setup and really set up a lot of the HTML templates, which were very useful for us. Jaden, he worked on the transaction, and he was he was good on doing the assignment downloading and submitting. He also helped out with the merging the code together after we all had our individual pieces. My personal job, I was in charge of the managers. I also helped out with merging the code into the final product, and I also have been working on trying to get our website deployed to the cloud. And with that, I will go into a quick little demo of our website here. So you get to this login screen. I'm going to log in as an admin here. I am an admin in our system here. So just to get going, I'll show you creating a user. It will not let you create a user with no input, which is good. Also, if I create a user with this email address, which is already in our database, it will also not let me do that because that email exists. But if I were to make a new user with a random email address at gmail.com, there we go. We've created a user successfully. If I go read, it is here. Yep, it's there in that bottom row. So now if I go try to, I can actually also update this user. I can choose to say make him an admin, and it should work. Another thing is it will not allow me to update a user to that email that already exists. So same referential or not referential integrity, same constraints there for update as if there were creator. And as you can see, this user is now an admin. I can also come through, I can delete users. That user I can delete. Another thing, referential integrity, if I have a user that is referenced in other tables, it will not let me delete it due to integrity issues. So that's our user function. If I go over here, I can show you creating a creator. We have, say I want to create a creator for myself. I decided to get into art. I can create this. We go read. Now all of a sudden, I am a creator here. Another option is I could go and update this. I could add my own birth date in here. Hopefully I'm not dead. And so, oh, that was the wrong, I updated the wrong thing. Forgot to do that. Hopefully I'm not dead. I can update my own birthday in here. And if we go to read the creators, now all of a sudden I have a birthday, and so does Leonardo da Vinci because I messed up there. We can also go back through, we can delete these creators. I can go delete that. Works there. Same thing for all these users, say Da Vinci, he has art pieces in our database. I can't delete him. There's a referential integrity check there for you. So if I look at our art pieces we have, I can create a new art piece here called new art and say I want to create, this creator is not Kyle Easton for some reason. And it was done in 2005 because I was 1 year old and I'm selling it for $10. I don't have a link on me at the moment. Maybe I do actually. This is a random picture. But if I create this painting, I should be able to read this art piece here. I believe it should be on this last page here. Yep, new art created by not Kyle Easton in the year 2005. There we go. I can actually even go in and update it and say, actually, this is not new art because it is 19 years old. I can update it. If I go back to read them, you will see it is not new art. Same thing. And I can go back and delete that, but I will actually wait and show you. Actually, I will. I can delete my painting that is, here it is, not new art. I can delete it and it will be gone. We also have referential integrity checks for any art pieces with transactions. So same here, you can see there were transactions involved with that painting, so it will not allow us to do that. If I go and read these transactions, we have a transaction entity involving the destruction of the Leviathan. That's why it did not allow me to delete it there. So just also creating transactions, we have a couple of checks here. I believe that most of these should be owned by the museum. If we read the art pieces actually, so we'll see here, destruction of the Leviathan is actually owned by me here. So if I try to create a transaction of the destruction of the Leviathan, destruction of the Leviathan, if the buyer is Jaden, say the seller is actually Adam, it will not allow this because Adam does not own that art piece, which is right there. You can see that. But if I go in here and say Jaden tries to buy it from me, who is the owner of this art piece, and hopefully this happened today, or actually yesterday, it will go through because I own that art piece. It allows me to sell it to Jaden. You go back, you read the art piece. This destruction of the Leviathan is now owned by Jaden. And if you see it in the transactions, this is actually our update transaction. but the destruction of the Leviathan went from Jaden Wang to Kyle Easton today. So that's that transaction there, and I could actually even update it and say this was actually the destruction of the Leviathan from, whoopsies, say the buyer was actually Professor here from me, and say it was actually a couple days ago. I can update it, and there we go. It's been updated. If we go to read our transactions, this transaction now shows that it went to Professor Wade there. And actually, if I wanted to go back through and I wanted to delete this transaction, I could do so as well. And it will no longer be there.